The night envelops everything with its darkness, and only the faint glow of the moon penetrates through thick clouds, illuminating the dark streets. In a small town lost among the forests, silence enveloped every corner, and only the quiet noise of the forest disturbed the peace of the small settlement. However, few people knew that it was on this night that the town witnessed something terrible and incredible. Strange things began to happen in the houses next to which there was a dark and gloomy forest clearing. Residents of the city claimed that at night they heard soft whispers and the sounds of pounding footsteps on the floor. Some claimed to have seen ghostly figures floating in the air and disappearing suddenly, as if blown away by a puff of wind. But the strangest thing began when at night the residents of the city began to wake up with secret wounds and bruises on their bodies. It seemed as if someone was attacking them at night when they were in their deepest sleep. The residents became afraid to sleep, but every time they tried to wake up at night, they saw pale ghostly faces hovering above them. Having decided to investigate this strange phenomenon, a local detective began to investigate. He studied the history of the city and learned that the forest that surrounded the city was the site of many bloody battles and tragic events. There were many legends that the ghosts of those who died in these battles live in the forest and take revenge on the living. The detective decided to go to the forest to find the source of this ominous phenomenon. He moved deeper and deeper into the forest until he came across an abandoned hut with a burnt-out roof. Despite his fears, he decided to spend the night in this hut to understand what was really going on. At night, when everything was plunged into darkness, the detective heard a soft whisper and rustling in the bushes. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and the windows in the hut cracked, as if something was shaking them from the inside. And then he heard voices from the past. Ghostly screams and screams that filled the air with fierce cold. In the darkness, he saw ghostly figures floating in the air and disappearing into a hurricane of icy wind. And then he saw their eyes, the cold, luminous eyes of ghosts attacking the sleepers. Heavy from the night spent, the detective decides to return to the city to make a plan of action. He turns to sources and tries to find a connection between the ghost attacks and the events of the past. With each passing day, he becomes more and more convinced that the ghosts of those who died in the forest are returning to avenge their tragic fate on the living. The detective discovers archival materials about battles that took place near the city in the past. It turns out that a terrible event happened in the past, a shameful betrayal that led to the death of many valiant soldiers. Their souls were left without rest and turned into ghosts, ready to take revenge on everyone who comes to their settlement. The detective decides to explore even deeper documents and finds references to treasures hidden in the forest during the war. He speculates that these treasures may be the key to solving the mystery and help reconcile the souls of the dead with the world. However, there is an important detail in this case. The treasures are part of a terrible rite that, according to legend, can awaken an even more terrible evil. The detective realizes that he has a difficult task ahead of him to find treasures, peacefully settle the conflict between the worlds of the living and the dead, and prevent the possible awakening of evil. But in this theater of operations, every step is risky and unpredictable, and every action can lead to both success and disaster. And then, when the detective is preparing to go into the forest in search of treasure, he discovers another mystery in the ruins of the local church. Locked since the ghost attacks began, he finds an ancient scroll with a mysterious inscription in Latin. The contents of the scroll seem to be related to ghosts and treasures, but it is not so easy to translate. While the detective is deciphering the text of the scroll, another ghost attack is taking place in the city, and one of the locals is in critical condition. The detective realizes that his time is being given less than ever, and solving the mystery becomes more vital than ever. Under the pressure of disasters, the detective begins to unravel the meaning of the Latin text on the scroll and comes across mysterious references to an ancient religious practice that, according to legends, allowed to control spirits and summon the dead. Nevertheless, the detective realizes that the solution to the mystery is sought in complicated and accurate historical connections. He begins his investigation by unexpectedly meeting with a brilliant professor from the history department of a local university who could help him with his research. Thanks to their joint efforts, they managed to explore historical archives and old scrolls in more detail. They find mention of a connection between ghost attacks and ancient rituals related to treasures that were hidden in antiquity. It turns out that the treasures that local legends were still interested in were part of an ancient ritual known as the Rite of Eternal Bond. This ritual was intended to gain invulnerability and immortality, but brought terrible evil to the world of the living. The practice of this ritual was banned due to its potential dangers, and treasures were hidden to prevent their use. However, the detective realizes that those who are going to find the treasures and perform the ceremony are again threatening the world of the living, awakening an ominous shadow from the past. The scary ghost spirits are beginning to show more and more aggression, punishing anyone who tries to approach their relics. During the treasure hunt, the detective discovers that time is working against him. The closer he gets to solving the mystery, the stronger the influence of the shadow world becomes. At the same time, local residents, worried about the ongoing attacks, begin to demand that the detective stop the ghosts at all costs. With horror, the detective discovers that the threat is becoming more serious than it was said. The impact of ancient relics and rituals is growing, and he understands that the possession of powers from such ancient times creates an unprecedented danger for ordinary residents. Together with the professor, they begin painstaking work to find a way to wipe the nose of this ancient evil. But the closer they get to solving the mystery, the stronger the influence of the spirits of the past becomes. Under the pressure of an unknown force, the flattering cases go to the library, where the documents of the city are archived. There they find mention of an artifact that, according to legends, is able to destroy the connection between the worlds of the living and the dead, and thus end the attacks of ghosts. However, information about where to find this artifact turns out to be scattered and incomplete. Having solved part of the literal meaning of the Latin inscription on the scroll, the detective realizes that in order to fully decipher it, he needs to contact a linguist specializing in ancient languages. In a great panic, when the area is covered by more and more audiophonic shadows hopelessly sinking, the detective rushes to find this artifact, which, as he assumes, should stop all these attacks. In his pursuit of knowledge, he accidentally finds himself in a dark abandoned Buddhist monastery, which held an ancient scroll containing ancient writings including a Latin abbreviation. After learning that this knowledge can lead humanity to the brink of extinction, he is faced with troubles and a dark past associated with this place. And the more the detective learns about the past, the more a threat is formed for him and everyone who cares about his life. Knowing that he needs help, the detective decides to return to the city to find a linguist and complete the decoding of the inscription. But the return promises to be dangerous and difficult, especially in light of the approaching high night, when the attacks of ghosts become more violent. Returning to the city, the detective learns that the linguist he was looking for has disappeared. In search of information, he goes to the old Institute of Linguistics, where the disappeared scientist worked. However, upon arriving there, he discovers that the institute has turned into a place filled with mystical energy, and the staff are becoming more willing to ghost. As the detective continues his search, he discovers that all his actions are being studied and that the threat to himself is becoming more and more real. But what will he find in this strange institute, and how can history, science, and ancient artifacts be connected in this mystical world? Time is running out, and the detective will have to reveal the truth before the shadow evil finally outrages the world and wipes it off the face of the earth.